Thank you, Mr. Clayton. At this time, we will reconvene the Wall Township Board of Education workshop meeting for Tuesday, October 13th, 2020. Mr. Smythe, could you do a roll call, please?
Yes, I can. Mr. Gartz? Mr. Hall? Mr. Hall?
I think he might be frozen.
Yes. I'll come back to him.
I'm sorry, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Krupa?
I'm here.
Ms. Fagan?
Here.
Mr. Nasser?
Here.
Mr. Sanfilippo?
Here.
Ms. Stites?
Here.
Mr. Wondrak?
Here.
And Mr. Adenizio?
Here, thank you. All right, time to get into committee reports. I will turn it over to policy, Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Ralph. So we had a meeting on the 7th last week, just to go over some new policies for first reading. Most of them were pretty cookie cutter in the sense that they were necessitated by changes to either existing law or were recommended by Strauss Esme, the company that kind of works with the different agencies to make sure that all our policies are compliant with NJ, Department of Education, as well as the state law. So we'll kind of go through them really quickly. The first one is policy 2622 to student assessment. Basically some small language changes that take out references to park, which is no longer part of the tested by the state. Basically also changing some wording about the science where we test now. Change. So again, just basically housekeeping. Dr. Hanrahan, anything on that that I missed on that particular policy? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Just to reiterate that science is moving to 5th grade, as moving from 4th grade. So, and also changing the name as Park, just as you said, Mr. Hall.
Right. Okay. All right. And then policy 5111, which is the eligibility of residents and non-resident students. The main change to this policy is to update for the new law, which does not allow the district to rely on the New Jersey Division of Motor Vehicles as a sole factor in determining residency. The policy also addresses changes to the F1 and J1 visas concerning acceptance of students and provisions concerning attendance and discipline. So the group talked about the F1 and the J1 to get more information. And Dr. Hanrahan basically explained to us that we don't have any J1 students enrolled at this time. So it really shouldn't be an issue for the district at the time. But again, it's really another thing of allowing the policy to reflect the law that says we cannot use the DMV in determining where someone has their domicile to see if they're eligible to come to our school or not. So that's basically it. Did I miss anything on that, Doctor? Okay. The next one is on policy 5320 in regards to immunizations. Again, this policy just tightens up the rules concerning how parents can opt out of the immunization requirements. The state changed some wording and some rules on that. It basically clarifies that verbal communication and confirmation is not sufficient. It must be paperwork. So if a parent wants to claim a moral or philosophical reason that they can no longer do so according to the new law. Religious objectors must file a letter stating that they object and it interferes with their religious rights. So that's a little bit of a change. The group, we also discussed how the rules concerning out-of-state students have a 30-day grace period, which is different. No such grace period if you go from one New Jersey school to another, though. Basically, also, the one other distinction, I think, was that Dr. Hanrahan explained that during a public health crisis, which COVID would be classified as, The district has the ability to restrict non-immunized persons from receiving in-person instruction. So even though you may be allowed to come with no immunization, if you claim a religious exemption to come to school during a health emergency, the district can basically say, well, that's great, but you still can't come to school. You have to be taught virtually. So
Mr. Hall, I think you're frozen.
It's doing a great job on that. Great job. The one thing I do
You
want
good now?
to,
Yep, we
Okay.
got-
am I back?
you're
Yes.
back.
Now you're gone.
Okay, I'll pick up just where he left off. I do want to mention that the policy does speak to if one of the if a student in the district has blood work to indicate that they do have immunity through a titer test, that also is acceptable to have that documentation as part of the immunization record. So I just wanted to add that, as Mr. Hall is frozen.
Yes.
Can I ask a question while we're waiting for
Sure,
Mr.
go ahead.
Hall
Yeah.
to come back? Going back to the last one, the eligibility question. There's one paragraph I noticed it was parent and guardian, and then there was a strike through on the guardian piece of it. I'm wondering why that was. I'll find the
The
page.
strike through is part of the edits from Strauss Esme.
Yes, but I'm wondering why specifically parent was left and guardian was removed. Usually throughout the policy, it's pretty consistent with parent and guardian, and in that particular case, it was not. I'll find the page here. Hang on.
Okay, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Adam, just to that point, I think a couple years ago, they changed it where they did away with some other terminology where I think they just classified everybody as a parent of a student. So that might be why the guardians crossed out. It's the same way they've changed, from pupil to student or whatever it is. And I believe that's to that question you're asking. I think that was done maybe 2 years ago.
I would understand that if it was consistent throughout the document, but it's not. It's on page 3 of the policy, 51.
Page 3.
That's why if I had seen it was consistent, I wouldn't be asking, but for some reason, it's not within the regulation.
Okay, so I have page 3 of policy, policy
The last paragraph.
5111, last paragraph. However, in the case of the dispute and the parent or guardian of a student in regards, okay, I will look into it for second reading for you, Mr. Nazar.
Thank you.
I'm back. I don't know if I can continue or,
Yes.
okay, so did we get through the regulation for immunizations? Did I get cut off or did we do that one?
I finished that one up, so I think we can pick up with the opioid. The Narcan is the next. Yes.
Policy, yes, 5330.4. Again, this one brings us up to date on the New Jersey statutes, really. It requires that an opioid antidote be accessible in the building during regular school hours and during school-sponsored functions that take place in the school or on the grounds adjacent to the school at any time. Again, basically, we're just making sure that we're in compliant with what the state says we have to have our policy say, and it should be that simple. Anything else on that one, Doctor? That needed to be
No, that was
added?
perfect. That was perfect.
Right, okay. And then the last two here kind of go hand in hand. One is the suspension policy 5610. Basically, it now requires that after a second suspension, that a student, having been suspended twice, has to sit down with his parents or guardians, as well as appropriate staff such as the principal, school counselor, family counselor, whoever needs to sit down with them and have a meeting before they're allowed back in school. Basically, this policy shouldn't be much of a change, although we put it in place. Dr. Hanrahan explained to us that currently Wall Board of Ed policy already is a higher standard. We require that meeting after the first suspension. So we match the policy to existing law, although our policy and our practice would be to actually be above and beyond that by having the meeting after the first one. Is that correct, Doctor?
Yeah, I just want to really stress that really, when a student is coming back to school from a suspension, it is essential that there's a reentry conference to really have the student reorient with coming back to school. If for academic reasons, social reasons, emotional reasons, there are many to set up counseling. It's a best practice to meet with the students following a suspension. And that also goes for an extended medical. It's really important to welcome the kids back and work together as a team.
Okay, and then the last policy that we looked at was policy 5620, which was the expulsion. This again policy was changed as to keep up with the new laws. Basically, this says that after a student is expelled, that the district should hold a meeting as soon as practical, again, with all the school personnel, principal, school psychologist, counselor, and so on. Basically, the meeting here is to see what appropriate supportive interventions or referrals the school can make to either school or community resources that can assist the student in addressing their difficulties. Basically, again, we're just following the law on this one. I did have a question on this one about how many students have been expelled during the last year or two. Dr. Hanrahan didn't have an exact number, but she doesn't believe it was more than one or two, if that, and hopefully she'll be able to maybe find that information out at some point. And again, just about I was only using the most extreme cases for the health and safety of the other students. So I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Doctor.
Well, just that I have no evidence that any kind of an expulsion hearing has taken place. I will absolutely confirm that. But I do want to stress that when a student when we bring a student for an expulsion hearing, it is a very procedural. It's a very procedural process, and there are a lot of steps, and a big part of that is certainly assessing if there's a mental health concern, if there's a learning concern. There are many steps, and and this particular adjustment to policy really speaks to including the psychosocial needs for the particular student. But again, I just want to stress that it is something that is it is a very procedural process, and it's reserved for the most extreme concerns with respect to discipline.
Okay, I think that's it for anything on the policy. Turn it over back to Ralph. Oh, Erin has a question.
I have a question in regards to policy 5320. Immunizations are a major concern for a lot of parents out there, and they take seriously in providing a certain schedule for their children if they choose to, if they don't choose not to. Do we know if any districts are going against what Strauss SMA's recommendation in regards to like a threatened outbreak or a vaccine preventable disease? Or is there any discussion between other districts that, maybe they're holding off on this policy at this point, just to see how things are going. It seems a little premature to be adopting it at this point when we're unsure what the future holds. So I'm just curious.
Okay, well, I can tell you that I have not been part of any conversations with respect to other school districts. The policy itself, it's following the requirements, the statutes that we're required to follow. It's formalizing the steps and the process and the who, the roles of the nurse, the roles of the principal. The religious exemption is still there. There is certainly, if a child it's medically contraindicated to have the immunization, that documentation that it's in the best medical best interest of the child not to be vaccinated, that document becomes part of the immunization record. With respect to the immunizations, we're still following what is expected of us by statute and code. This particular policy really speaks to laying out the steps, in my opinion, a little more clearly than past policies. But I can certainly find out if there is discussion amongst other superintendents with respect, because that there is a strong, people feel very strongly about vaccinations.
It was mostly letter E4, where it says those children with medical exemptions to receiving specific immunizations may be excluded from school during the vaccine preventable disease outbreak or threatened outbreak as determined by the New Jersey Commissioner, Department of Health and Seniors. So the fact that if they wouldn't have a vaccine, that would be specific towards a disease preventable outbreak, that the student would then have to go virtual. If that was more or less, everything else in the policy seems pretty much standard. It was more or less if let's say the vaccine comes out for COVID, and would this end up on the list? Would students who don't have that vaccine then have to go to a virtual option?
Right. Well, COVID right now is not on the list. It's certainly not on the list.
Right.
I don't know that it would be the vaccination, certainly that that we're all familiar with. It's the measles, it's the mumps, it's the rubella, tetanus shots, that type of thing. An example would be, if there's a whooping cough or a measles outbreak, and that kind of information is tracked by the local health departments, and that information is shared with school districts. If there is an outbreak in, a certain, a certain illness, measles is one that comes to mind. It's nice and clean, and measles can be very serious. And the objective in all of our policies is to keep the children keep them healthy and keep them safe. So this type of action is when it comes to, it's an extreme. It's very extreme when there's a medical condition where you're contacted by the Board of Health. But certainly the flu shot is not on for K through 12. It's not a requirement. So it would be interesting to see where COVID fit when that vaccination comes. But I will find some information out to see if other school districts are handling it differently. You're welcome.
Anything else?
That should be it, Ralph.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Adonisio, I'd like to just talk about something that is it's not quite policy, but it speaks to best practice, and it does speak to one of our policies regarding substitute teachers. Currently, there is a practice in the district that to be a substitute teacher in Wall Township, that you need to have a teaching certificate. That is not what is required statewide. That is more of a local practice. Our policy welcomes welcomes individuals that hold a substitute certificate. What is required for a substitute certificate is 60 college university credits from a regionally accredited institution, a clean criminal check, and of course, the paperwork filed at a board office. I think it's very important that we look to expand our substitute teaching force. I think it's a great opportunity to really provide others in the community with an opportunity to provide a service at the school that is very much needed across New Jersey. There school districts, I do know from other school districts, everyone is looking for substitute teachers, and it's a very important role in a school to have substitutes to provide the intermittent support and supervision for our students. It's also an opportunity for every district that I've worked in. It's a great opportunity for even college students that are thinking about maybe education. Maybe that's a great thing that they might want to get into. And if you have this, if the college students have their 60 credits and they can file the paperwork and get the substitute teaching credential, it's a great opportunity to really allow people to see if this wonderful occupation is for them. And it's also an opportunity. We have a really a unique situation right now where we do have so many college students that are living home right now, that are attending virtually, that this might be a really great opportunity. So it's something that it would be, in my opinion, a great thing for the entire community. And I do want to share that I will be advertising for substitute teachers with the credential of substitute, and I'll also be providing information on how someone can acquire a substitute teaching credential. So I just wanted to share that with this group because I felt the policy would probably be the best place to share my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Dr. Harrison. All right, curriculum instruction, Mr. Krupa, you're up.
With regards to the curriculum and instruction, I know that we have 3 items on the agenda, although we always discuss a lot more than that. The meeting did take place tonight prior to our meeting now because of the busyness of everyone's schedule this past week. So without further ado, Dr. Gleason, if you please take it from here. You're on mute too. You're on mute.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. As Mr. Krupa said, we have 3 items on the agenda. The first item is the educator evaluation guidance. This is an update to what's in code regarding teachers and other certificated staff being evaluated each year. Due to the pandemic and the subsequent virtual settings that are now taking place in schools, we've had to look at other ways that the state will allow us to evaluate those teachers who are teaching in the virtual setting. So we have a variety of different instructional settings right now. We have some teachers who are at the elementary level who are teaching in a traditional face-to-face class. At the elementary level, we have teachers who are teaching solely in a virtual setting. And then at the secondary level, we have teachers who are teaching in a hybrid of both. They have students in their classroom live on campus, while at the same time streaming direct instruction to students who are at home learning asynchronously. So the new guidance and modifications to the regulations allow for administrators to conduct traditional observations in classrooms where there are traditional face-to-face interactions happening. And then there is a new portfolio process that administrators and teachers will use when you have a teacher teaching in a hybrid setting or an all virtual setting. That portfolio process will allow the administrator and the teacher or the certificated staff member to have a window of time anywhere from 2 weeks up to 6 weeks, and to collect a variety of artifacts that both the administrator and the teacher feel support effective teaching practices. So there's a lot of flexibility in the portfolio process. It does involve more conversation with the teaching staff. It's a different kind of evaluation process than we've had in the past, but it does allow for, I think, a more fair and equitable observation for teachers in the virtual setting. We also did some work with our DEAC, which is our District Evaluation Advisory Committee. We've disbanded that committee when it was no longer required back around 3 or 4 years ago, but it was recommended by the state that we convene that committee again. That committee is comprised of one representative, at least from each teaching band at every school, and an administrator and a variety of other stakeholders. We met about a week and a half ago, and we reviewed the observation instrument to take a look at what are the types of elements that cannot be observed because of the pandemic. An example of that would be students working in small groups. In a traditional setting before COVID-19, that would be one indicator of a thriving classroom with engaging instruction, where you see students highly engaged and you see them working and collaborating in small groups together. Because of social distancing restrictions, that observation element is not practical anymore. So that's one example. We went through all of the elements. There are dozens of observation elements, and we decided collaboratively and collectively which elements would not be appropriate during this time. So that was a very productive meeting with the Evaluation Advisory Committee, and the administrators are now turnkeying that information to the teachers, and we will begin observations starting October 15th. Tenured teachers get 2 observations each year, and non-tenured teachers get 3 observations each year. Any questions on the updates to the educator evaluation guidance? Okay. The next item on the agenda is it's kind of an encore from an item that was on our agenda back in March, in our workshop meeting in March. You've heard us talk about Dr. Paul Riccomini. He is the professor from Penn State who has been working very closely with our K-12 teaching staff on math retention strategies. We've had a lot of success with Dr. Riccomini, a lot of buy-in with the teachers, and some really visible results in student outcomes. Dr. Riccomini requested that the district work together with him on a research study. The research proposal proposes that we use our teachers to practice the intervention strategies over 10 lessons. There would be a pre-test and a post-test. There's no harm to children. It's using the strategies that all of the teachers in all of our schools have been learning for the past 2 years. But the research study would be, the group for the study would be at West Belmar. It would be 4th and 5th grade students over a 10-lesson period. We did, as I said, we did go over this back in March, but because of what happened shortly thereafter, we were not able to get the research study approved at the next business meeting. So during our C&I committee meeting today, we went back over that research proposal, and we'll be asking the board to approve that research study at the October 27th business meeting. I do want to reiterate that while West Belmar will be the setting for the study, should the board approve that study, that these intervention strategies have been taught and collaborated upon with all of our teachers in all of our elementary schools. They're using the strategies in all of their classrooms, and the retention strategies have also been used in the secondary setting as well. So we'll be working with Dr. Riccomini throughout this year, and I think it would be beneficial to actually have some solid results about the hard work that the teachers have been doing in learning these retention strategies, and to really see what the results of that study will look like. So we will have that coming back on the October 27th agenda for approval. Are there any questions on the research proposal?
I have a question, Dr. Gleason. I didn't think of before. So after the study, what might he do with the results in terms of using it as research, or will it be instrumental in his adjusting what he does with our teachers in staff development, as an example, or a book? What is the intention?
I think there's some universal impact. I think primarily we'll see the impact here, and we'll make decisions and an action plan around measuring that success and driving those kinds of retention strategies deeper into instruction. I also believe that Dr. Riccomini would use the results of that study, although obviously there'll be no names, but he's been published many times. We've purchased his books for our teachers. He is a relatively renowned mathematician from Penn State, and he's been used quite a bit in New Jersey and in Monmouth County because of the success. So I would imagine that he would also use the results of that study to endorse his work as well, but there would be no identification, obviously, of students or teachers. And parents would have consent forms that they know that their child is, they would be participating in the study or not participating in the study. Any other questions? Okay, the final agenda item is an update on school reopening. And I know that is certainly a central topic for our families, our teachers, and our entire school community. We started this school year, as we all know, with developing a framework for transitioning to get school reopened, and then how that might look as we transition to bringing more and more students back. What we've come to know is that that timeline has to be very fluid and very current. As current as what does the daily and weekly health data look like? And we've said from day one that the decisions that this district must make with regard to school reopening and school opening more fully will always be based upon student and staff safety first, while still taking in the input and feedback from administrators, teachers, parents, and the school community. And I think we've continued to do that and stood behind that focus and priority. What we will begin to do starting next week, which is October 19th, at the elementary level, we had 206 students who were enrolled in virtual school. Those are district virtual classes. We are going to begin to transition back 46 students from virtual school into the campus classes, where they are attending school 5 days a week on an early dismissal schedule. Now, those students they're from across the district, and they represent the full breadth of K-5 sections. And in some cases in those classes where they'll be returning, they will create a situation where social distancing may not be able to be implemented. So what we will be doing in those classrooms where that 6-foot social distancing is not practical, we will be installing plexiglass guards or shields. They're trifold shields around individual student desks, and they will be installed on every desk in the classroom where that 6-foot social distancing may no longer be feasible. So we're going to start with those 46 students coming back. Those are the students whose parents have requested that the students come back at the midpoint of the marking period, as we've included in policy. And then we'll look again at the end of the marking period to see what additional students will be coming back, and again continue to outfit all of those classrooms that will not have social distancing available, we will be outfitting all of those classrooms with the trifold plexiglass shields so that all students have those protective barriers around them, and teachers as well. At the secondary level, we're going to start next week with the high school with a change in the high school schedule for grades 9 to 12. We're going to be eliminating the virtual Wednesday, and we're going to transition where each student cohort, instead of being on campus 2 days a week, they will be on campus 3 days on 1 week and 2 days on the second week. Again, the next alternating week, they will be on campus 3 days a week. And on the last week of the month, they will be on campus 2. So it's a 3-2 schedule. So that increases their days live on campus with teachers an additional day. Now we're going to watch the health data very carefully. We're remaining hopeful that we will continue to see a flat line and not see a spike. And if that is the case, and we see that that's relatively stable, we hope to move that same framework down to the intermediate school, but we are going to start with the high school first. And then we will look to see if we can transition at intermediate school as well with a similar model. As I've said, we really have to plan both long-term, but in the moment. And these decisions for October 19th, beginning next week, are very much made in the moment with the current health data as we see it on a daily basis, both from the transmission rate to any local or hyperlocal outbreaks. So we have to keep a very close eye on that. We know that parents are anxious. Many parents are anxious to see their students return to school. We are really very aware of the impact, no matter how good virtual learning may be in a particular instance or in a larger case. We know that school is not designed at the K-12 setting to be a virtual experience. It's meant to be a social and academic experience for students. And we were thrust into this because this is a way to mitigate and to comply with the governor's orders and the road back document. But ultimately, our eye is on the end goal, which is to bring all students back 5 days a week, full day, as soon as we possibly can. But we are leading with safety first. But we can't reiterate again. We hear from lots of parents about how isolating it is, how the experience of virtual is not the same as in person, and we know that. And so we, again, are looking both from a very short view on the daily basis as well as our long-term plan. Some of the other impacts for the phase that we're in right now at the elementary level, parent-teacher conferences, which were originally scheduled on the approved district calendar, were scheduled to be held November 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 9th over a period of 4 days, a mix of afternoons and evening. They are now going to be held over a period of 10 days from November 9th through November 20th, and they will be scheduled virtually. Parents will be hearing from teachers to schedule those virtual conferences. It actually provides us a little more time over that 2-week period. The students will not be released any earlier from school. The conferences will start at approximately 1:05 or 1:10, and parents will schedule those conferences virtually with the teacher. So we're hoping that that will, again, be in line with trying to limit the number of visitors into classrooms, and at the same time providing hopefully some flexibility from parents that they can access that conference from wherever they are. So we're hoping that will provide some convenience for parents as well. That's what I have for school reopening updates right now. Dr. Handerhan, did I miss anything?
No, I just would like to add that I will be sending out a letter really discussing what Dr. Gleason shared. And because the high school probably has it certainly has the biggest change, Principal Sergio will be sending out a schedule, much like she did for the start of the school year, to share with Wall High School families.
Thank you. Mr. Krupa, do you have anything else?
No, not anything to add to those items that were already talked about, but just so that the public knows that, as a group and a committee, we do talk about things outside of those that may have been reported with regards to major action needed by the board. Coincidentally, we might have follow-up on something like technology as an example. And we talked about briefly tonight that the teachers were given a different hardware other than the Chromebooks, so that would address their ability to keep connected and work with the students and that new hardware. I think that we're Lenovo or some other type of computer like that. I forget what the name is. I have it in my notes, which I'll write up after tonight. And the other thing we talked about, coincidentally, also was social emotional learning, that being one of the main concerns people have, whether the child is at home or in a virtual setting, that we keep tabs on that. And I just wanted to have a brief discussion tonight with the committee and bringing that up. And so I did, and we talked about that, and that they'll be checking into that so we can have some more information to share out with the rest of the board and the public, maybe at the next meeting or the month after. But these are just things that the public needs to know, because sometimes it appears that we're sitting here not asking questions or thinking about things, and that is not at all the case. And we appreciate the emails and the concerns and suggestions that everybody gives. So that's it, Ralph.
Thank you, Mr. Krupa. All right, we are going to go into finance and facilities, and Mr. Hall is going to step in for Mr. Garth this evening. You're muted, Joe.
Sorry about that. Okay, let's see what we can do here. Basically, I'm just going to basically turn it over to Brian for the most part, but I just wanted to say on our F&F committee meeting that we had, we went over the new school dude report, which basically is going to allow the F&F committee to see the work orders that have been placed in by the janitorial staff and the custodial staff, and to keep track a little bit better than maybe in the past on what exactly is going on, as far as if there's multiple issues in a particular room, or if the same issue comes up twice, that the F&F committee will be more in a position to see that quicker and to react to it and ask questions about, why is this happening? What's going on? And we felt that was a good step into making sure that the board had oversight on some of the things that, work orders that have been going on in the school. The second thing would be the enterprise accounts, and I'll have Brian speak to that in a minute, along with the food service program and the WRAP program. Well, you know what? Why don't we do that? Brian, you have anything to say about the school dude, or you could just talk to us about the food service and the WRAP? Maybe we can do that, and I'll continue on after you're done.
Okay, absolutely. Now you summarized the school dude reports. That's one of the attachment status analysis Mr. Moretta, our facilities manager, will be providing to the F&F committee on a monthly basis. And it'll be adjusted based on the feedback received from the F&F committee as we go each month. With regard to the two enterprise accounts, it's early. We've only finished our first month, which was actually a half a month. We only had 10 school days. So with regard to the food service program, we had 10 lunch days. However, based on what we anticipated at the beginning of the school year, having hybrid schedules with early dismissals, with not sure if the number of students that would be virtual, we really weren't sure how the food service program was going to operate. The decision was made to have the grab and go meals and subsequent days, breakfast and meals, if you're on the hybrid schedule, made available at the end of the day. Part because of the Department of Agriculture's extension of the waiver program, where all students qualify for free meals. And I think that has really propelled the program to be doing as well as it is for the first month. Compared to last year, and again, we have some overhead costs both for the WRAP and the food service program. We have summer and monthly overhead costs that it's difficult to absorb with only being in school 10 days or offering meals 10 days. But compared to last school year, we were in a negative, I believe, just a little bit less than we're in the negative this year. So that's actually, a positive. We were negative 22,000 and change. And this year, even only being in school 10 days, we're negative 25,000. So when we have school days or months where we have significantly more school days, we're able to absorb those overhead costs and turn a profit. And that was evident each month last year. Again, I'll reiterate with regard to the food service program that the Department of Agriculture initially waived the free and reduced requalification requirements, or the summer program. They extended through December 31st. They've come out and updated that where it is extended for the full year. So all students qualify. And the food service program makes meals in anticipation of providing for all the students that are in school each day. And we encourage our families and the students to take advantage of the meals being offered through the food service program. With regard to
Mr. Smythe, I just think also with that, I think people need to understand that they don't have to fill anything out. The students can just go pick up the lunch and just be on their way. They could get it one day, they don't have to get it another day, but it's free for every student in every building from now until the end of the school year. So I think there might be some confusion with that with some people.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. Yes, there is no application, there's no paperwork. All students are automatically qualified. The food service program keeps track of the counts with the meals that we provide, and we submit that to the Department of Agriculture for reimbursement. So the program truly is benefiting our food service program this year, which obviously is quite beneficial. And and the meals are offered at the end of the school day as students are departing the building. And if you're in the WRAP program at the elementary school, we offer it to those students as well. And it doesn't matter if you're taking a bus or a parent pickup. The meals are being offered to all students. With regard to the WRAP program, again, that has summer overhead. So the beginning of the school year, we're in the negative, and we hope as we continue to go through the school year and have more days in session, we'll be able to make that loss up. And we're still, working with our staffing. The rules change with regard to the number of students we can assign to a staff. That's being updated on a regular basis. So that's going to change the program's bottom line and what our projections are for the school year. But the program, we opened up enrollment for the WRAP program. And if there's any questions, the information's on our website. Feel free to contact Colin, who runs that program for the district. Any questions on the enterprise? Okay, thank you. Back over to you, Mr. Hall.
All right, thank you, Brian. I guess the next issue will be the football uniforms from the Walnites Family Foundation, and that there was some discussion on on the Walnites Family Foundation would like to provide the football team with some uniforms, some discussion on that back and forth about what's allowed under the rules. And again, I don't know, Ralph, can you speak to a little bit better as far as the ins and outs of the rules that we have to follow on that? It's brought to our attention that we need to be very vigilant in making sure that we do it by the book and follow all the rules that are required.
Correct, Mr. Hall. So something that was brought to our attention was the Title IX issue, where just to sum it up really quick is that if there's a donation to the boys team, you have to have a donation to the girls sports as well. So, if you're donating uniforms to a boys team, you'd have to donate it to a girls team. So there's equality. So right now, the whole football uniform is kind of in a holding pattern. the season's already started. The football team, as everybody is aware, is doing fantastic. And by the way, ranked number 5 in the state of New Jersey. Congratulations to them. So this is going to be something that's going to be ongoing, and we're going to figure out, hopefully, as a little more time goes on, possibly once the football season's over, figure out the best way we can move forward with the new foundation and how they can assist the district for the kids. So that's kind of where the whole thing stands right now. So it's going to be, we're just kind of in a holding pattern for a little while with it.
Okay. All right, very good. The next topic on the agenda was the Dr. Lynch's report on the Central Elementary School mold assessment after the leak, where the water damage. I don't know, that was pretty interesting reading. I don't know if if Tony or Tracy would like to talk more about that. That seems to be more up your guys' alley.
The report, which is posted on the website under facility updates, it was a positive report. And the recommendation is that we will continue to monitor, and that is what we will do. So I invite everyone to read this report. It's quite interesting reading. And again, it's posted on the facilities updates.
Okay. Number 5 is the ventilation assessment at the district schools. Again, that was a report basically detailing, the where we're at and what we need to do. Again, Doctor, you would like to maybe give a Reader's Digest version of that, because that's again a lot of papers, a lot of report there. But I don't know if you could comment on that, or perhaps Brian can comment on that.
Yeah,
I'm going to recruit Brian to help me with this.
absolutely. And to item number 4, Dr. Lynch's report, they, after the flood claim where we had the water valve fail, we had a number of areas within the building where we had water. Dr. Lynch, through his company, conducted air testing both on the first and second floor. And the executive summary of the report is that all the results came back that the mold testing determined that the mold is equivalent to the same inside the building as outside the building. So it was within the same limits as outside the building. So that was the positive result of that report. With regard to the ventilation assessment item, what the district has done is basically done an evaluation of our ventilation system, looking at the road back in the school reopening plan. We need to provide mechanical ventilation where we're providing fresh air to all spaces in the school, or have operable windows that we can open up the windows. Air conditioning is also a plus. They reference that if you don't have air conditioning, that you should open up the windows. However, the requirement is that you provide a fresh air component, whether it's through mechanical means or through operable windows. So we did an assessment of the district to ensure that all of the spaces being used by the district either had the mechanical ventilation or operable windows. And if they had operable windows, ideally they had air conditioning if it wasn't a mechanical ventilation. We are moving toward the goal of having all instructional spaces air conditioned, which we are not quite there yet. But through the assessment, we identified 2 areas that were not instructional, but did not meet the mechanical ventilation or the requirement or provision of providing fresh air through mechanical ventilation, or have the ability to open windows because there's no windows in the 2 spaces. However, the district has modified ventilation systems to provide fresh air to those spaces. And I'll note they were not instructional spaces. One was at Old Mill and one was at Wall High School. But they weren't classrooms or instructional spaces. So the goal of the assessment was to ensure that all the spaces being used either have mechanical ventilation and fresh air or the ability to open windows.
Okay, thank you. Then we go to number 6 on our agenda tonight would be the facilities projects update. We got the HVAC summer project. I know, Brian, again, if you could talk to that. And then encompassing that would be the change orders, which was attached here for everybody to see. Some changes that we that necessitated through the construction process. So if you could just talk to us about that for a moment.
Sure, absolutely. This is the HVAC project where we're providing heating, ventilation, and air conditioning to spaces at Old Mill, Allenwood School, and Central Elementary School. The project is complete. We are going through the punch list phase at this point and project closeout. But as part of that process, we have some change orders that are going to be on the agenda in 2 weeks for the board's approval. To date, the district has approved 2 change orders totaling $24,000. If you recall, we had to do some electrical work on the 2nd floor of Central Elementary School, and we replaced the drop ceiling materials at Allenwood Elementary School. I won't go through all the additional change orders, but there was things that were uncovered or determined as we were going through the process. There was a need for an electric ceiling heater in a bathroom at Central Elementary School because of the way the steam system was removed. We installed air conditioning in the classrooms of Central Elementary School that were not part of the project, so that did not yet have air conditioning. So we put in 2-ton units into each of the classrooms. That was the largest change order at a little over $38,000, but that provided air conditioning to those 10 classrooms, and that was previously discussed with the board and the F&F committee. Additionally, we had skylights at Allenwood Elementary School that are no longer used, but they still exist in the roof above the corridors. And aside from, in addition to improving the energy efficiency and to address them as a maintenance item, the plexiglass skylights were removed and replaced with a metal covering. Lastly, we secured a unit in the ceiling at Central Elementary School so that would facilitate the installation of the drop ceiling. We installed a new drop ceiling in a space adjacent to the kindergarten room at Central Elementary School to cover the exposed piping. And what we did was include in the final documents is filters for the units that were provided and the rooftop air handlers that were provided as part of this project for the changes that we will have scheduled for the remainder of the school year. Those were the total change orders based on the project. The total amount of change orders will be approximately 2.7% of the original bid price or original contract price of the contract.
All right,
Questions?
thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, the last item I'd like to talk about would be the status of the trailers, and I'd turn that over to Ralph to introduce our attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Yeah, so what we're going to do is Mr. Scarillo is going to give us an update in regards to the trailer situation, and I believe he's also going to touch on the floors at the high school and where we stand with that. So with that, Mr. Scarillo.
So as you can hear from the prior comments, we've been keeping Dr. Lynch busy. He advises that he's going to have his final report on the high school gym floor in the next several days. The plan is that when we receive that report, it will be posted under facilities on the website. Additionally, the F&F committee is going to schedule a town hall type committee meeting. So recognize that it's going to be the F&F committee. So the likelihood is you will not see all of the board members there. You'll see just the members of the F&F committee, because if we exceed the quorum number, we would have to advertise it as a board meeting, and that'll make it just a little bit more cumbersome and might delay the scheduling of that session. So as soon as we receive Dr. Lynch's report, number one, it'll get posted on the website, on the facility, so that everyone will know it's there. and they can read it in advance of the F&F committee's town hall type meeting. And this will provide Dr. Lynch with an opportunity to go over his report and to answer any questions that evening. So that's with respect to the high school gym floor. With respect to the trailer audit, as you know, we have been posting updates weekly with respect to our status on the trailer audit. As part of that audit, we reached out for the prosecutor's office to inquire as to what, if any, investigation was being done by the prosecutor's office. It was our understanding when we took over this project that there may have been a prosecutor's investigation and may have been closed. The communication with the prosecutor's office was that, in fact, there was an open investigation with respect to the trailer project. So we had a discussion with respect to what we were doing, and pursuant to the memorandum of understanding between boards of education and law enforcement, we were directed by the prosecutor's office to pause our interviews of individuals. We are permitted to continue to look at documents, which we will do, but they've asked us to pause our interviews. And pursuant to that agreement, we will pause our interviews until they complete their investigation. They did not give us a timeline for the completion of that investigation. Based upon just my own understanding of what's going on, I would anticipate there might be a pause of 6 to 12 weeks, only on the interviews of individuals. With respect to anyone who wants to provide us with documents, with respect to anyone who wants to ask us about documents, I would encourage them to continue to use the email address that's been posted on the facilities portion of the website. We will continue to provide updates. We have a number of people who have indicated an interest in being interviewed. We are going to contact each one of those individually and explain to them that we are pausing the interviews at this time, and that we will get back to them as soon as we're able to continue those interviews. And in addition to that, it's our understanding from our insurance carrier that we also should at this moment follow the direction of the prosecutor's office. It's our understanding that a notice of claim has been filed with respect to the trailers, and that that notice of claim was followed up by litigation, which was filed recently. So based upon that, we are also pausing the interview process for individuals with respect to the trailer audit, So that gives you our update from our office with respect to Dr. Lynch and with respect to the trailer audit.
So thank you, Mr. Scarillo. So just so everybody understands that the original timetable, we were focused on having a report out to everybody sometime in the beginning of November. That's going to probably be pushed back until possibly after the holidays.
Yeah, that's true, Mr. Anthony. I anticipate it'll be after the holidays. We will continue to provide updates and certainly talk at every board meeting with the status of where we are. So there will not be any, so everyone will have the information as to where we are by each board meeting, and they can check the website on Fridays that we generally post our update before 4 o'clock on a Friday on the website. And again, if anyone has any questions, anyone has information, anyone wants to still forward their name with respect to a possible interview, the email address is trailers@scarillolaw.com. We check that continuously, and we attempt to respond every time someone posts something there.
Thank you, Mr. Scarillo.
You're welcome.
Did anybody have anything else? Just want to check F&F. That was it. Ms. Stites? You're still on mute.
Yes.
There you
I'm sorry. Is this the time that we can ask general questions, or this has to be about F&F?
Wait until the end for the general questions. All right. Okay. All right. At this time, I am going to open up public comment on any school district issues. Please raise your hand.
Hi, this is Betsy Cross. I live in Wall Township. Let's see, a couple things. First, I want to say, Lisa, sorry. I guess you're on to bigger and better things. To be the Assistant Commissioner of Education is wonderful. and I wish you well. And I think you did, a good job filling in, doing the work for Mr. Cram when he was here, and helping out Tracy. I think you've been a big help. So I wish you the best of luck. And that's my first topic. Second one is on the interim assistant superintendent. I'm kind of glad to see that because there's so much going on here, and I think it's a good thing. So I hope we get the right fit in here. And I think maybe the attorney should be involved. Sometimes I just think we get sides on the board members, and these four together and these four together. And I don't know where Russell Gartz is. It didn't say if he had an excused absence. People pick sides. So I want to get somebody in here up and running. I'm glad to see that they're either going to be an assistant super or a superintendent before, to get a handle on so many things that have gone wrong here, and especially in the business office. I can say I'm glad to hear that the investigation with the Monmouth County Prosecutor's Office is still open. That is wonderful news. And I will keep updating my timeline and the information. And I'm glad that people are contacting you, Mr. Scarillo. And if anyone doesn't want to, contact you and they want to be anonymous, they can go through me. So I have a lot of that, and that's welcome. So please, anyone that has information has got to get the information in. Seeing some documents that came back today, it's another layer. And we're going to get to the truth. It's taken 14 months and we're not there yet. So people need to answer questions. Mr. Smythe and Mr. Adonisio, you've done a terrible job with this. And the board president is the one that sets the precedent of answering questions, and Ralph just totally blew it. And here we are 14 months later still doing this. And, I think we'll have to have resignations from the board again. We lost 6 last year. We might lose 8 this year. And I'm not kidding. So Dr. Lynch, yeah, please have Dr. Lynch here. I don't want anybody speaking on Dr. Lynch's behalf. This mercury floor issue, we have hidden minutes from June 4th from Mr. Gartz. God knows where they are. Mr. Cirillo, I'll follow up with you on that tomorrow. I can't tell you how many emails I've sent on the mercury that nobody replies. Mr. Nasser, Mr. Hall, nobody. Nobody gets back to you. It goes in the black hole in the Board of Ed. And now we're talking about, health concerns. I think everybody did see that in Pennsylvania, a superintendent and 2 other workers were arrested for endangering students. It's criminal. And I think that's why this is being taken so seriously with the trailers, because I'll finally get a copy of what Mr. Cram got, because I don't know how Mr. Cram wrote his report. So when I get a copy of that disc, we're going to see if it matches up. Something's not right. And Mr. Smythe was sitting on documents for 6 months, demoed the trailers while a criminal investigation was going on. And the board let him do it.
Ms. Cross, there is no criminal investigation going on right now.
What type of investigation do you think is going on, Ralph? Tell me.
It's not a criminal one, but
It's
continue.
not? Okay.
Continue.
All right. What kind would it be that the prosecutor's office does? Ralph, you want to answer that? You just cut me off.
Continue, Ms. Cross.
Okay. The trailers never should have been demoed. The reports weren't done. There was an investigation going on. Brian had zip drives on his desk for 6 months. He gave the documents after the demo. It's
Thank you, Ms. Cross. Your time is up. And you're wrong as usual. Okay. It's not unmuting.
Is
Mrs.
it
McCarrick?
working?
Yes, good evening.
Yes, am I there? Oh, good, thank you. Hi, Karen McCarrick. I have two things I'd like to address after hearing the agenda policy. So the first one was immunizations. I really implore the board to look over the wording. It makes me a little nervous. There's a part that says you can require additional vaccines during an outbreak or threatened outbreak and exclude for the duration. I think that's going on very fine, crossing a fine line. So I just implore you, and I thank Erin for bringing that up. That immunization policy really needs your attention. So I just ask you to look over that before you make any big decisions. Most importantly, I'd like to talk to you about the school reopening plan. Was that stage 2? I don't know if I misunderstood if what you're talking about with 76 K through 5 and the plexiglass going in through the elementary schools, and then the high school gets to go every other Wednesday. It sounds great, but I cannot tell you how disappointed I am that you left out Wall Intermediate. Socially and emotionally, they are desperate to get more time. I don't understand what the metrics are. What are we using? Are we determining no cases? Is there a date, a deadline? And how can you leave out Wall Intermediate? I don't understand that. So those are my questions about our reopening plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ralph?
One second, Mr. Hall. Anybody else for public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Mr. Hall. Oh, a couple. Oh.
Yeah. Well, maybe we answer the questions first from the previous caller, Ms. McCarrick?
Yeah, good.
I just wanted to ask Tracy, what the caller just referenced about the ability to require immunizations. I know Erin kind of touched on that, but the part that I think she also touched on was the fact that you could require. You can't stop somebody from coming to school if they don't want to do immunizations, if they follow the rules as far as the religious exemption requirement goes. But the law, is it the law that says that if there is a public health emergency declared by the governor, maybe Anthony could speak to this, is that then you do have the ability to say, well, yes, we can't stop you from coming to school, but we can stop you from coming to school physically and make you go virtually. Is that your understanding of the way the policy will read?
Yes, it is not an arbitrary. It's not an arbitrary decision for the school district. It's very much rooted. There are some medical conditions that the students are in. They're at risk with some medical conditions, and it speaks to the health and safety of a student. So as I discussed in policy when Ms. Magnin asked for the question, I will do some more research, and I will also provide more context with respect to the citations that are in the policy.
And I can confirm to this point, at least, that the policy is consistent with law.
Erin, did you?
Joe, just to what you had mentioned before, there were 2 separate sections in the policy. One outlined the medical conditions as a medical exemption, and then right underneath it, it even applied it to religious exemptions as well. So it took the wording both as like a threatened outbreak or exemptions against vaccine preventable diseases, and applied it both to the standard of the medical exemption as well as religious. So it was applying to both, that the student would then have to go to virtual if in this case they chose not to get the vaccine. So that's why I thought it was.
Yeah, but see, that makes sense to me. I think what it's saying is if you have a student who elects and parents that elect not to vaccinate, the school district can't really stop that based on the laws, that as long as the parents follow the laws that are provided for them to do so, whether it's for a medical necessity or for a religious, either way. But if there's a public health emergency declared by the legislature or the governor or whatever, that at that point in time, even though they're allowed to go to school, normally when the public health crisis kicks in, the law says, well, now the school can say, no, you can't come to school, you have to do virtual. I think that's what they're trying to say.
I agree, but there are going to be people out there who don't agree to that. So there's like two sides to
well,
the spectrum.
whether they agree or not, that's not the issue. It's whether or not the board feels that if what Tony's saying, if that's the law, if the governor said, if the law says that the school district can, under a public health emergency, require students who are not immunized for whatever reason not to come to school, that they have to do virtual. I'm sure that there's going to be parents of kids that are unimmunized that want them to go, that are going to be upset with that. But I'm just saying that would be what the law says. And then we can debate whether or not, we should do it, but that's what the policy should say, that we have that ability to do that. Am I kind of wrapping that up right, Anthony? Is that kind of what I'm saying that right?
Yes. Yes.
I think consulting and researching other districts and what they're going to implement, just because Strauss Esme is saying that this is policy coming down doesn't mean we're going to adapt it in our district. We got to do our due diligence and really research it. I mean, this is a very sensitive subject, especially in these current days. So, I'm not comfortable just going off of what Strauss Esme is saying.
All right. Well, we can have a discussion on non-immunized children being in the district during a health emergency. Should they be physically in the school? That's something I guess we'll debate, next week.
I don't think it's non-immunized children. I think it's, it's vaccine specific towards what's coming out. And I just, it's a threatened outbreak. The wording is very vague here. So we have to really be specific when we're analyzing it.
Okay, as noted, more information forthcoming.
And that is a classic example of an appropriate board policy discussion. So you're going to have the recommendations from Strauss Esme utilizing their attorneys, which is what they do. They utilize their attorneys to analyze the law and provide a recommended policy. But Aaron, you're correct. Joseph, you're correct. This is a discussion for the board to determine whether or not they adopt it, whether or not they modify it, how they take it. So what you have now is the root or base recommendation out of Strauss Esme for an appropriate board discussion.
And Dr. Handerhan, can you talk us to the, I guess the thinking where with the high school going, 3 and 2, and then 3 and 2, and versus the intermediate school, how that comes into play?
Absolutely. Now, to phase 2, if there's any change to our reopening plan, I suppose it would be considered a phase 2, a phase 1A. I want to be clear that when Dr. Leeson and I presented this, our reopening plan, that was, I'm grateful for so many people in the school district that contributed. It was, the timeline was an estimate. And when we discussed it, it was rooted in trying to predict the future, trying to predict the future of COVID. And we had a guesstimate of 4 weeks, but we were very clear in sharing that it was rooted, the decision to move and move the time in school needle is going to be rooted in not only feedback from various factions of this community, but also the up-to-the-minute real-time health data provided to us by our local board of health. And in fact, we even provided the phraseology of hyper-local. And last week locally, and I'm talking, of course, within the Wall Township community, but also neighboring communities. It was not a good week as far as transmission numbers in our community. We had an increase of quarantines. Of course, that went up. I would like to mention something about quarantines. I do want to thank parents. Everyone's goal is to keep our kids in school and get them into school 5 full days. That's what everybody wants. But we need to really work together, and we need to have an open dialogue with your children's school nurses, the children's principals. If someone in the house was exposed, have that conversation with respect to that whether quarantine is necessary. I will tell you that we do have positive cases in our school community. And our school community includes staff. It includes, parents. It includes children in live instruction, children in the all virtual program. So this is something that is hitting our community on big levels. So I want to be clear that the health data is a big part of the decision making. That said, we started the school year really, in some people's opinion, rather aggressively in the elementary school. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we were to start 5 days with full classes, even though it's an early dismissal. When you look at the reopening plan for elementaries across the state, many elementaries were hybrid. And as we know now, many school districts did open virtually. So they're moving along the continuum. We started aggressively. I am thrilled that we did that. It is amazing to see our elementary school kids in school 5 days per week. As we're moving forward on the continuum for them, we're installing the plastic shields in all the areas where where they're needed. But we're also moving forward because, of course, it's cold and flu season as well, to begin outfitting other classrooms as well. That takes me to the intermediate school. The intermediate school has a unique schedule. We have a lot more flexibility with the amount of class time for the different sections. We front loaded the kids with the traditional core classes, and we're providing their elective programming in the afternoon in the virtual sense. In the high school, you don't have the flexibility with respect to that we did at the intermediate school. At the high school, every single period has to be provided similarly, certainly with respect to class time. Our goal in grades 6 through 12 is to start to increase in school time. The high school is the natural choice because our students at the high school, there's a lot of high stakes testing that happens at the high school. There are our students, so many are involved in our athletic program that they are on campus. It's what seems to me almost every day, if not every day, for different types of practices. The kids are on the high school campus. Our goal is to really study what's happening at the high school and, and learn from it. You'll notice in my letter tomorrow, I'm not going to be assigning a 4 weeks for this step. I don't think that's prudent to do so because we're dealing with, it's again looking into a crystal ball. We need to be responsive at a particular time. If things improve drastically, I wouldn't want to be locked into a 4 week. We want to be fluid. We want to be able to be responsive. That said, as we move forward with November, as we're moving forward with December, we're looking forward to the holidays. But with the holidays, there's a lot of families will be getting together with family members. There may be some travel, which I discussed in my letter last week. We need to be responsive to what certainly the end of October and November brings us. We need to watch, we need to look, and we also, I feel very strongly about taking really a building response. What do I mean by that? If numbers in a particular building, speak to having to close, with great discussion with the health department, if I can keep other buildings open, I want to do that. So we're taking a very, very building-based approach, and every school has different needs. I concede that every child needs to be in school 5 days a week. I concede that. I want that to happen, but we need to make sure that we're doing this as responsibly and prioritizing the health and safety of our students and of our staff members. That always has to be our priority. And, my hope is that we will be able to move forward with more in-school time. That's the hope. And we certainly, in the next, where we are right now, I don't want to lock us in, because if we're able to be responsive, that'll be great. If you're following numbers closely, you'll notice that last week was vastly different than the week prior to that, with respect to positive cases in this community and our neighboring communities. So it's something that can change very quickly in a very short period of time. So we need to be responsive to that. And again, tomorrow I'll be sending out a letter, really summing up what was discussed here this evening. And we're moving forward with with plans to support the needs of particular buildings at a particular time.
Thank you, Dr. Hannaford. All right, back to public comment.
Hello?
Hello, good evening. Just
Hi.
your name for the record, please.
Caden Wood. I live in the mall. I'm in 11th grade right now, and I'm going to be trying out the bowling team hopefully, if it's there. I don't really know for sure yet, but we did like a quote for how much it would cost to get shirts for everyone. And currently it's like $48 per shirt, and you need to get 12 shirts for like the entire boys and girls team. So my question is, I didn't know who pays for that. Is that like, does each student have to pay $48 for the shirts, or is that like a school thing? I didn't really know. That's all I have.
All right, Dr. Handerhan, can you answer that question?
Well, it depends. Is it considered a uniform? I can certainly speak to Mr. Radu.
Okay.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a uniform. Just so
Okay.
you know, it's a polo uniform. But
Okay.
yeah, you can speak to. I didn't know. I guess Radu. Yeah, it's probably the person to ask.
Will do.
We'll Dr. Handerhan will speak to him, and then he'll speak to the whole team, so you guys know. Okay.
All right. Thanks. Well, I don't actually go to school, so I don't know how. I'm like full virtual, so I guess he'll send out an email or something.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We'll make sure you get notified, but you will be able to, if sports go forward, you will be able to participate.
Well, yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Have a good night.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Duran?
Hi, thank you. I believe Caden's concern, just so you know, Dr. Hanahan, was that other sports get their uniforms for free and their t-shirts for free, and the bowling team had been told they have to pay for theirs. So since he supports himself in his extracurricular activities, he was very concerned about spending the money for a t-shirt when all the other teams get the t-shirt. That was the basis for his concern. I was concerned, Ralph, about your comment that Betsy Cross was wrong as usual. I wanted to say first that congratulations, Dr. Gleason, on your position. Well deserved, and I'm happy you're going to be going over to that side of the state, I guess, to work, even if it's virtually working or telecommuting. But congratulations. And I'm glad, Mr. Cirillo, that the investigation is going forward on the trailers. But Ralph, your comment that Betsy is wrong, I just wanted to explain that Betsy had recently received, because I read all those Oprahs, she had received the results of a grand jury subpoena. And, as you know, the grand jury plays a pretty significant role in the administration of criminal justice in our state. So Betsy coming to believe when she sees that in a response to that there might be, in fact, a criminal investigation going on is a very logical conclusion. But the problem we have, this is where the problem is. Betsy had requested the same documents that the grand jury subpoena document requested of our business administrator, Mr. Smythe. Mr. Smythe responded to that subpoena in December of this past year. And he obviously provided documents to the Monmouth County Prosecutor's Office in response to that subpoena. The documents that were responsive to that subpoena had not been supplied as of that date, as of December, to Betsy Cross. They were instead produced to her over 6 months later in response to her Oprah. So the problem is that Mr. Smythe is not responding properly under the law to an Oprah request. Those documents should have been produced even before the subpoena, because Betsy Cross actually issued her Oprah prior to the subpoena. So why Brian Smith gets to hold on to the documents and not produce them for 6 months after is a very grave concern for those of us who actually care about transparency. It means those documents existed and that he failed to do his job properly in being an Oprah custodian for the Board of Education. I find that always to be a red flag when I see that kind of lack of cooperation. And when you look at the nature of the documents, you have to question why they were withheld. And you have to question why the board then allowed Mr. Smythe, who was in charge of looking up documents on himself, because Betsy's clearly trying to find out if Mr. Smythe had performed his duties properly. And Mr. Smythe is in charge of looking for documents to support either his or her position on it. That's problematic. But why the trailers were allowed to be demolished prior to determining whether the Board of Education in Trenton's requirement that those trailers be certified for educational use was determined. So no matter how many times Betsy has asked, there's been not a single document produced to show that those trailers were ever properly certified. And our concern is the lack of timeliness and the fact that documents still aren't being produced. So I am concerned about it. And the article that Betsy's referencing of what just transpired in Scranton, Pennsylvania, for those who don't know, the business administrator and the superintendent there were taken out in handcuffs because of their failure to keep the board and the general public advised on health concerns that arose from the presence of lead in water, which is very similar to the presence of both mercury in our gym floors and mold in the school trailer. So that's the basis for the concern. It's not a question of someone being right or wrong. It's a question of having concerns addressed not politely and accurately as best that we can. So thank you.
May I
Thank
just,
you. Yeah.
John, may I
Mr.
just-
Cirillo, could you answer the point about documents going in and out as to, what possible legal advice that the board had received
Right.
previously?
Yeah, I want to talk about a couple of things here.
Thank you.
I can't certainly testify firsthand as to anything that's happened before I've gotten here. But recognize that the board, the business office, the administration follows the advice of counsel. And whether the advice of counsel is given when it's given, and I'm not making excuses for mine or anyone else's, but the advice of counsel is given based upon the information that the council has at the time that they provide that information, at the time that they're asked a question, and at the time they're providing the advice. So you give advice based on the law and based on the information as an attorney you have at the time. That all being said, you can draw a lot of inaccurate conclusions for what goes on based upon the fact that and I'm not criticizing anyone, but you might not know what counsel knows at the time, what counsel is able to share at the time, and what counsel says to his or her client at the time. So all that being said is, I hear people complain about the past, but we are attempting at this moment for the last 3 weeks at least, and since I've been here in the end of July, to provide information as quickly and as accurately to responses as we become aware of them, and we're consulted regarding those. So I think while I hear what's being said, I can't provide an answer. I can only provide the fact that the Board of Education is made up of 9 individuals, none of whom function as the attorney for the Board of Education. The administration is made up of several individuals who do not function as the attorney for the Board of Education. They all rely on counsel, and I'm not criticizing counsel. What I'm saying is that at any given moment, counsel may have information that he or she is not able to share with the board based upon what he or she knows, or provides the board with a particular course of action based upon what they know, and maybe based upon what they can't share with the public at that time. The second piece, Ms. Duran, I read that Scranton case and followed that case when it came out. And you just gave a really glittery, New York, in the old world, the New York, the Enquirer, I think the newspaper was, headline. There were intentional, purposeful acts that took place that far exceed anyone's reasonableness that resulted in the arrest of those individuals. It wasn't simply, as you said, perhaps not saying something. There were some very serious intentional acts. We're in the middle of this investigation right now. We're going to continue to provide information as we go along. We're certainly going to cooperate with the prosecutor's office 100%, and we'll see where it all goes. But I can just, and I've said this in the past, my lawyer's license and my reputation are way bigger than this investigation. I apologize for that, but they are. So you'll continue to get direct information from me. You'll continue to get accurate information as we move forward. You heard me say earlier, Dr. Lynch has advised us, as soon as we get that report, he's advised us it's coming. As soon as we get that report, it's going on the website. There's going to be an FNF town hall type meeting. We've been providing information to everyone who's contacted us at the email address, and we're going to continue to operate that way. But I do 100% support your inquiries with respect to the status of all of this.
Mr. Cirillo, one additional question. I don't know if you've seen it in the documents you've reviewed, and I believe this question's been asked and answered several times, but the talk of the trailers not being certified. My understanding is the executive county superintendent every year had to give his blessing to those trailers, whether information was submitted to his office or he actually came out, or a representative came out and physically looked at those classrooms. So to your knowledge, I mean, were they certified?
So the information that I have is that they were certified, but I will admit to you that based upon the documents that I've personally looked at up until this point, I have not found the certification. That does not mean it doesn't exist, because we have additional documentation that we are looking at, that we have piled up, that I just haven't gotten to. I had to stop a couple of times for the interviews just to prepare the questions for my interviewers to do the interviews. So I will provide that. If you're asking me and Mr. Addonizio to take a look at that, I will search that out and get that information. We've also been in communication with, I haven't personally, but one of my attorneys has been in communication with the Wall Township Building Department and with representatives of the Wall Township, the municipal governing body, to get the information that they have with respect to anything we've done with respect to the trailers. I know we're awaiting that response. We'll take a look at that also. But if you're asking me specifically to get that information, we will search for that information specifically.
Well, I mean, I just can tell you from my 7 years on the board, or at that point, I guess it was maybe 5 years or 6 years of those trailers, that we always, every year it popped up that it went to the county executive superintendent for approval. So is this something that you're talking about going back to day one when they were first put on site? There would have been some kind of other certification for them?
No,
Because I would just be confused. I guess I'd be confused that you could get some kind of approval in year two if you didn't have an approval in year one, and then that would continue on for however many years they were there.
My understanding, and I have not reviewed this section of the law recently, is that the approval is an annual approval. But there are several different kinds of approval. So certainly what we would consider like a certificate of occupancy has to be gotten when they are set up initially. Now, I'm not calling it a CO, but a CO type document has to be gotten when they are set up initially. And then once that happens, well, the DOE has to confirm that they're suitable for education. So all of that has to take place. And you're right, Mr. Addonizio, it doesn't happen in one year and never happen again. It's an ongoing process.
Okay.
We just got, I'll be honest with you, we got kind of left turned off of that search as we were interviewing people. We're coming back to it. We just got left turned, and we have that stack of documents. But in talking to some of the other witnesses, we got left turned off of it.
No, I appreciate your answer. Thank you so much.
Okay.
In there real quick.
Yeah, go ahead, Adam. Adam, you're choppy.
How about now? A little better.
You still are. Almost like you're underwater with electric.
In the meantime, Mr. Addonizio, if I can add,
Yes.
with regard to the certification, the project was submitted to the Department of Education before they were installed. They were approved, and because we have a building department, Department of Education allows for the inspection of for the purposes of the building permit to be reviewed and approved by the local building department. And that's what was done in the case of these modular classroom units being installed at Central Elementary School. They were subsequently inspected and approved on an annual basis, or they were approved on an annual basis by the county executive superintendent for the Department of Education. With regard to the certification that they're approved for educational use, unless someone corrects me, there is no certification that modular classrooms or trailers can be used for educational use. The approval is because there's different building codes in different states, and trailers and modular classrooms are built in many different states, and rather trying to have the manufacturers build trailers or modify the construction of trailers to meet the needs of all the different building departments or all the different state building codes, there's a uniform commission for modular office trailers, I'll use as a general term, that all the building manufacturers of modular classrooms or trailers will adhere to, and they provide an approval that the trailer meets the standards of this industrial commission for the construction of modular classrooms or trailers. The trailers did have that commission's approval, or that approval. And that has been asked, it has been answered, and it was answered by the subcode official for the Township of Wall, who responded to that question with regard to the approval, and that the final approval and installation was inspected by the local building department and was approved, and a certificate of occupancy was issued for them. With regard to the request for documents and documents being withheld, I wouldn't be able to count the number of open requests we received. Every one of those requests, and that's the only way documents are requested from the school district, is through the Open Public Records Act. And every request that was made was provided a response. And every response that was provided was in accordance with the Open Public Records Act. And if it was not, the requester has the ability to file a complaint with the Government Records Council or file a complaint in Superior Court. Neither has been done with regard to any of the requests that have been made regarding documents relative to the Central School trailers. And I'm sure that if there was a violation or if documents were being withheld, there would have been a complaint filed with the Government Records Council, and there has not been. So with regard to the statements that documents have been withheld, documents been sitting on my desk for 6 months, are absolutely not true. Every document that was requested was provided, or every request that was made was provided a proper response. If it wasn't made in accordance with the Open Public Records Act, that was the response that was provided.
Thank you, Mr. Smythe.
You're welcome.
Mr. Nazar.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right. Well, Brian stole my thunder because that's kind of what I was going to say. It was answered by the township code official. It wasn't part of an Oprah request. I believe that was just an open communication amongst everybody.
Thank you. Did anybody have anything else this evening? Ms. Stites?
Yeah, I just have a few things. And this is just in general now, right? Ralph, this is the time we can make general comments.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so just generally speaking, I encourage anybody who's interested to take a look at Dr. Lynch's mold report, complete with photos. It was absolutely outstanding. Based on, what I've seen with that report, I really look forward to reviewing future documents and his presentation to the public regarding what he finds on mercury in the gym floors. I think he's really going to be able to communicate with our public, our stakeholders, and our staff in a way that we can really understand and digest a lot of really complicated, I'm sure, information. Speaking to that, I hope maybe we could just clarify one more time for the public. I'll be following that presentation, but that's going to be part of an FNF town hall. So I will not be able to be at that because of restrictions on more than 4 people meeting because of a quorum. That's kind of something technical that if you're not familiar with, the regulations regarding how the board can meet. So if you don't see us there necessarily on that meeting, it doesn't mean that we're not following it. We're certainly there and interested. It's just that I'm not part of FNF, so I will be there. I also would hope that I was just hoping that somebody could maybe explain to folks. I read the emails that come in, and I know we do when they're addressed to the entire Board of Education. I think it's important that people in the public realize that it's not necessarily appropriate when we get an email directed to the entire Board of Education for one of us as individual members to make comment or response back. And it's not because we're not listening or we're not reading or we don't want to respond, but sometimes it's inappropriate for me personally to make a response, either because it's not my area of expertise or because I don't administrate the school, so I can't make those responses. So I don't know if maybe Ralph or Mr. Scarillo could kind of just clarify that for folks. And my final point would be, maybe Mr. Cirillo could clarify for folks who do want to participate in the trailer investigation that if they want to be anonymous, that they can certainly address that need directly with you as opposed to needing to go through anyone else from the public to act as a middleman. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cirillo, did you want to tackle those?
So with respect to the trailer audit, anyone who wants to remain anonymous, we are giving them the option of being anonymous. So, certainly they'll have to trust us on that, but we will absolutely maintain their anonymity if there's a concern about that. We've actually interviewed someone already who's asked that question, and we're going to maintain their anonymity with respect to the investigation. We explained to them when they give us that information that we're not able to attribute it to them. So often we are going to have to verify it another way if it's important information. I think that was one. Christine, I apologize. I was taking notes and I didn't hear the first part, though, the first question.
Okay.
About the FNF?
Yes, please.
Okay, so with respect to the, what the board is attempting to do is to schedule Dr. Lynch as soon as possible after receiving his report. As you understand, though, under the Open Public Meetings Act, the board would have to advertise any board meeting 48 hours in advance. That will automatically put any meeting several days later than we might be able to have it, because in order to have a quorum present, we have to do the appropriate advertising under the Open Public Meetings Act. That's the minimum of 48 hours and the publishing in a newspaper. So in order to avoid that, the board has decided to do this as part of an FNF committee. However, if it's done as part of an FNF committee, if it's a virtual meeting, you will not see more than 4 board members on the screen, more than 4 board members' names, because if we add another board member, once we go to 5, we violate the Open Public Meetings Act. So other board members will be listening in. They can participate as members of the public and can watch and view Dr. Lynch, but they cannot congregate or get together as a member of the committee because they'll violate the Open Public Meetings Act. But we're doing that really to move this along so that the public gets an opportunity to hear Dr. Lynch as soon as possible after he provides us with his report.
Thank you. Anybody have anything else? No. All right, seeing no new business, could we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Chris. Can I have a second?
Second.
Adam, all in favor? All right, perfect. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Be safe.
Right.
Good night.